I mean, you never told them about rehab, right? Or should I not bring that up? Her voice was light, playful even, like she was teasing me over some innocent joke. But the air around the dinner table dropped 10 degrees. Forks paused. Glasses clinked a little too hard. Every head turned toward me. It was supposed to be a quiet celebration, my first promotion in years. A few friends, some coworkers, and yes, Emily, my best friend since 8th grade, sitting directly across from me. The same Emily I helped hide after her DUI. The same Emily I lent money to when she said her lights might get shut off. I felt every eye on me. I laughed. I actually laughed. Softly. Like someone who hadn't just been exposed, ambushed, humiliated. It's not a big deal, I said, picking up my water glass with a hand that trembled. That was years ago. I didn't even look at her. I couldn't. If I did, she'd see the tears rising, the betrayal hitting like a brick to the chest. But she knew, and she smiled anyway. Emily wasn't always like that. Or maybe she was, and I just refused to see it. We met in 8th grade, both of us loners for different reasons. I was the quiet kid who got good grades but didn't talk much. She was the loud one who made people laugh and got in trouble every other week. But somehow, when we got paired for a science project, it clicked. We were polar opposites, and maybe that's why we worked. At first, being her friend felt like being invited into a world I had only watched from a distance. She was bold, fearless. I was the girl who always asked permission before raising her hand. Emily never asked. She just did things. And when she got caught, she flashed that perfect grin and got away with it. Most of the time. By 10th grade, we were inseparable. My mom used to joke that we were attached at the hip. Her mom, who floated in and out of her life like a bad signal, never seemed to mind where she was, as long as she wasn't at home. So, Emily stayed at our place a lot, ate dinner with us, slept over every weekend. My mom even bought her a toothbrush to keep in our bathroom. But it wasn't until senior year that I noticed the imbalance. It started small. She'd forget her lunch money and ask me to cover her. She'd accidentally crash our car into a mailbox and ask me to say I was driving so her mom wouldn't find out. At first, I agreed without thinking. That's what best friends do, right? They protect each other. But I was always the one protecting. I remember the first time I got called into the principal's office. Someone had plagiarized an essay in our English class. Emily had copied mine, word for word. She cried, told them I gave it to her, that I told her it was okay. I hadn't, but I didn't say anything. I took the suspension. I remember my mother's eyes, disappointed but quiet. She didn't push, just said, "Are you sure she's the kind of friend who'd do the same for you?" I nodded, but inside I wasn't sure anymore. College changed things, or maybe it just revealed them. I got into a state school on scholarship. Emily didn't get in anywhere. She said she couldn't afford applications, but I think she never really tried. I helped her apply for community college, let her crash in my dorm room for weeks at a time. She said I was her anchor. I wore that like a badge of honor. The first real crack came during my sophomore year. I was dating this guy, Marcus, kind, driven, a little nerdy. He liked that I was quiet, thoughtful. We were happy. Until Emily got bored one weekend and decided to stir things up. She told him I had cheated on him with some guy from my writing class. A complete lie. I still don't know why she did it. Marcus broke up with me in tears. "I thought you were different," he said. When I confronted Emily, she didn't deny it. "I was just trying to protect you," she said. "He wasn't good enough for you." That was her way, twist everything into some kind of favor. After college, I got a job at a nonprofit, working with women re-entering the workforce after incarceration or recovery. It was hard, emotional work, but it gave me purpose. Emily, meanwhile, bounced from job to job. Bartending, then selling real estate, then back to bartending. She was always between something and nothing. And still, I helped. I helped her write resumes. Let her use my address when she didn't have one. Gave her rides. Lent her money. Covered rent when she couldn't make it. She'd say thank you. Sometimes she'd cry. And then she'd do something that made me regret ever opening my door. Like the night she got arrested for drunk driving. She called me from a station, sobbing. "Please," she whispered. "Don't let my mom find out. Just come get me." I did. I always did. The only thing I ever asked her to keep between us, the one moment I didn't want shared, was what happened when I went to rehab. It was after a terrible year. The nonprofit lost funding. My apartment flooded. My grandmother died. I had a breakdown. Anxiety turned into insomnia. Insomnia turned into dependency. I checked myself in. Stayed for 35 days. Got out, clean and stronger than I'd felt in years. I didn't tell many people. I didn't need to. That chapter was mine. Emily knew. She was the only one who visited. She brought me a teddy bear and red vines and told me I was brave. So the night she said it, blurted it out in front of friends, coworkers, my new manager, I didn't just feel betrayed. I felt humiliated. Because it wasn't just the words. It was the way she said it. Like it was funny. Like it was hers to tell. Emily always had this gift, or curse, of turning people into punchlines. But she never used me like that before. Not in public. Not in front of people who didn't know my whole story. People who weren't part of the hard chapters. What hurt most was that she looked pleased. Like she'd taken something delicate and sacred and shattered it just to see the pieces fall. Our friendship, if you could still call it that, had always been a little lopsided. But I'd told myself that was okay. That I was the strong one. The dependable one. That maybe Emily needed someone to hold her together. What I never realized was how often she'd taken advantage of that. How many of my secrets she'd kept not out of loyalty, but leverage. How often she'd used my kindness to excuse her cruelty. My phone buzzed that night long after everyone had left the restaurant. "Emily. Sorry if I crossed a line. I just thought you were cool with people knowing. Everyone loves a comeback story. A comeback story. That's what she thought it was. Like my pain was her punchline. Like my past was hers to shape into some clever little narrative for the people at the table. My hands shook as I stared at the message. I typed something. Deleted it. Typed again. Deleted again. In the end, I said nothing. And that was the moment, the quiet moment, where something in me changed. I wasn't angry. I was done. The morning after the dinner felt like the calm after a car crash. Nothing looked broken, but everything inside me ached. I went to work like nothing had happened. Smiled at the front desk. Gave my morning report. Led a small group coaching session for women trying to rebuild their lives after prison. Irony wasn't lost on me, helping them build theirs while mine quietly unraveled. But by noon, I felt it. The looks. The pauses. The careful tones. My manager, Shannon, passed me in the hallway and smiled too brightly.
"Hey.
Just checking in. You doing okay today?" I nodded. Of course. She hesitated, then added, "Just if you ever want to share anything about your story with a team, I think it could really resonate." Resonate. So they knew. I forced a smile, then closed myself in my office and stared at my hands. Trembling again. Like that dinner hadn't ended. What had Emily said after I left? How had she framed it? Had she gone back to the table and told them I was brave? That I was such an inspiration? That it was all in the past? I wouldn't know.
Because I didn't ask."
And no one offered. That weekend, my phone buzzed again. A different name this time. Rachel, a mutual friend from our college days. Rachel. "Hey, just saw some weird stuff Emily posted. You okay?" My stomach dropped. I opened Instagram. She'd posted a photo of our dinner. A group shot, all smiles and wine glasses, captioned, "Sometimes your strongest friends are the ones with the wildest pasts. #redemption arc #dinner tea." I felt the blood drain from my face. Wildest pasts? The emojis? The hashtags? I scrolled down, hoping, praying it wasn't as bad as I thought. It was worse. In the comments, someone had asked what the caption meant. Emily replied with a wink emoji. Let's just say she's been through some things. And just like that, it spread. People I hadn't spoken to in years started liking the post, commenting fire emojis, messaging me with passive-aggressive, "You're so strong" notes. It was like being at the center of a rumor tornado, except the source wasn't some enemy. It was my best friend. I didn't respond. Not publicly. Not privately. Not yet. But inside, something began to shift. Not anger, exactly.
Clarity.
The kind of clarity that feels like ice in your bloodstream. Monday morning, I walked into work and found Shannon waiting in my office. She looked uncomfortable, papers in her hand, lips pursed. Just wanted to follow up, she said. There have been some questions about your background. I blinked. Questions? She nodded. Nothing formal, but some of the board members saw Emily's post. A couple funders, too. They're asking whether any of it was disclosed in your hiring process. I felt my breath catch. I wasn't hiding anything, I said carefully. I went through treatment. I've been clean 5 years. It had nothing to do with my job. In fact, it makes me better at it. I agree, she said quickly. Completely. But some of the donors are conservative. And with us being in a renewal cycle, it's just sensitive timing. I stared at her. They want to know if my healing disqualifies me from helping others heal. She looked down. It's complicated. I smiled.
Cold. No.
It's actually pretty simple. That night, I sat in the dark with a cup of chamomile tea, scrolling through old messages from Emily. Years of voice notes, memes, desperate texts asking for money, Uber rides, last-minute favors. A library of evidence. But I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't even sure what I was planning. I just wanted it to stop. By the end of the week, another message came. This time from a woman named Beth, someone I barely knew from high school.
Beth.
Hey, weird question, but did Emily really say you got fired for a drug problem? She was going off in a group chat I'm in. Just sounded off to me. I stared at the message, rereading it 5 times. So now I was fired? Which I wasn't. Now I had a drug problem?
Which I didn't.
It wasn't just exposure anymore. It was defamation. And it was growing. I called Emily. She answered on the second ring, her voice high and fake sweet. Hey, stranger. Long time no talk.
I didn't waste time.
Why are you telling people I got fired? A pause. Then a laugh. Oh my God, seriously? You're mad about that? It was just a joke. Everyone knew it wasn't true.
No.
They didn't. Oh, come on. You know how people talk. Don't be so sensitive. My jaw clenched. Do you have any idea how much damage you've done? Damage, she repeated.
Wow.
I didn't know I was that powerful. And that was it. The sentence that killed every ounce of goodwill I had left. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply said, "This is the last time we speak," and hung up. Then I blocked her. Everywhere. The silence that followed was unfamiliar, eerie almost. No late-night messages. No calls begging for help. No dramatic voicemails. Just nothing. And it was then, in that quiet, that I started to see the full picture. For years, I had poured into someone who had no intention of ever holding space for me. I had mistaken proximity for loyalty. I had confused history for trust.
And now?
Now, I was finally seeing her clearly. And in seeing her, really seeing her, I started to see myself again, too. 2 days later, I got an email from a coworker. Subject: FYI, you might want to see this. Inside was a screenshot from a private Facebook group. A thread about toxic friendships and women who weaponize vulnerability. At the center of the discussion?
Emily. Not posted by me.
But by someone who had once called her a friend, someone who had been burned by the same flame. I wasn't alone. I never had been. I had just been too loyal or too scared to see it. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I wrote in my journal.
Made tea.
Sat outside and let the night air wrap around me like armor. And for the first time since the dinner, I smiled. Not because things were okay, but because I knew I would be. They say silence is golden. But for me, it was something else entirely. It was liberation. It started with the small things. I deleted Emily's number, even though I already knew it by heart. I unfollowed her on every platform. No announcement. No warning. No grand goodbye. Just vanished. I thought I'd feel guilty. I didn't. What I felt was relief. The quiet was unnerving at first, like stepping out of a hurricane into a still room. No chaos. No flying debris. Just peace. Thick, full, consuming peace. A week later, I walked into HR at work and asked for a private meeting. I sat across from the director, Kara, a woman with kind eyes and a sharp sense of fairness. I told her everything. Not in a bitter way, just the facts. The rehab. The years clean. The comments Emily had made. The Instagram post. The board members who were whispering without knowing the truth. Kara leaned forward and said something that stuck with me. People with real character don't weaponize other people's healing. I thanked her and left the office lighter. That same afternoon, she sent out an internal memo celebrating my 5-year anniversary at the organization, praising my work ethic, leadership, and resilience. A quiet mic drop, but one that made waves. People came to my office one by one, not to pry, but to affirm. "You didn't owe anyone an explanation," said Maria from development. "You're one of the most grounded people I've ever met," whispered Jamal, the janitor who saw me every morning before sunrise. Validation from the people who mattered. Silence from the one who didn't. I began pulling back in every area of life where I'd been pouring too much. There was a group chat, mostly college friends who had known Emily longer than they'd known me. I left it. No warning.
Just gone.
My Venmo history? Scrubbed of every loan. To Emily, I'd never gotten back. I even changed the locks on my apartment, just in case she still had a spare from the time she accidentally locked herself out of hers and needed a place to crash for a few nights. That few nights had turned into 3 months, and she never paid rent. I didn't bring it up. Not then. But I remembered. The biggest shift came with my finances. For years, I'd been helping people in quiet ways, a habit born from trauma. I donated to fundraisers, paid for therapy sessions, covered groceries, sent anonymous cash apps to single moms I met through work. It felt good, but I realized I was pouring from an empty cup.
So I paused.
I didn't stop giving. I just gave to myself first. I booked a weekend cabin upstate, alone. Brought books, journals, and a playlist of nothing but soft piano music. I hiked. I cried. I slept. I laughed out loud to no one. I came back changed. There was a time when I'd wake up and check my phone for messages from Emily before brushing my teeth. Now, I didn't check my phone at all before noon. She still hadn't tried to contact me. Or if she had, I wouldn't know. I had blocked her across the board, not out of anger, but because I didn't need the noise. For the first time in years, my brain was still. No anticipatory dread. No rehearsing responses. No need to defend my side of the story. Because I didn't care who believed it anymore. I knew my truth. And that was enough. The funny thing about pulling back is how quickly people notice, especially the ones who are always pulling you forward for their own benefit. A week after I left the group chat, Sarah, a mutual friend, texted, "Hey, just noticed you dipped. Everything okay?" I stared at the message. Not, "How are you?" Not, "Is there something you want to talk about?" Just, "Everything okay?" Code for, "You're being inconvenient." I didn't reply. Another week passed. Then came a follow-up. "You've really changed. Just saying."
Yes.
I had. I'd changed from being a doormat to a closed door. One evening, I got home and noticed a small package at my doorstep. No return address. Just a box, medium-sized, taped shut. Inside was the teddy bear Emily had given me during rehab. No note, just the bear. The same one that once smelled like lavender and hope. Now it smelled like guilt. I didn't cry. I placed it gently in a donation bag and set it by the door. Let someone else find comfort in it. As I pulled away, my world didn't shrink. It expanded. New people stepped into the space Emily used to occupy, colleagues who invited me to brunch, old friends I'd lost touch with because Emily didn't vibe with them, even a neighbor who always waved but never spoke. Her name was Denise, early 60s, silver hair, garden gloves always on. One morning, as I watered my balcony plants, she called up. "You've got a calmer energy lately.
Peace suits you."
I blinked. then smiled. Thank you. No one had ever said that to me before, because I had never made space for it to be true. Peace wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself or post captions about cutting off toxic people. It just existed, quietly, completely. And for the first time, I wasn't performing stability. I was living it. Late one night, I sat in bed, rereading an old journal entry from rehab. I had written, "I'm terrified people will define me by this moment. That my healing will be used against me. That I'll never be able to outrun this chapter." And yet here I was. Not running, just standing still. And that stillness had more power than all the noise Emily had ever created. There was no big announcement. No digital funeral for our friendship. No cryptic Instagram quote. Just absence. She faded. And I flourished. My skin cleared. My appetite returned. My laugh deepened. I slept through the night. I made peace with myself. People say revenge is sweet. But honestly,
Peace is sweeter.
because it lasts longer. And it doesn't require anyone else's validation. For the first time, my silence wasn't fear. It was freedom. The twist didn't come with fireworks. It came with a knock. 3 short taps on my apartment door. Sharp, uncertain. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the peephole. It was Logan, my ex from years ago. The only person who had known me before rehab, during it, and walked away when I started putting myself back together. We hadn't spoken in almost 4 years. Cautiously, I opened the door. "Hey," he said, with a sheepish half-smile. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. He looked different. Leaner.
Softer.
His usual cockiness traded for something quieter. He sat on the edge of my couch, fiddling with the hem of his sleeve like a kid in the principal's office. "I know I have no right to just show up," he began, "but I needed to tell you something." I folded my arms, standing. He took a deep breath. "I ran into Emily a couple weeks ago." My stomach dropped. I didn't move. She was at a party. Some tech mixer in the city. She was drunk. Or pretending to be. You know how she gets. He looked up, eyes searching mine. "She was talking about you." I stayed quiet. Let him keep going. "She was bragging. Saying how she saved you. That if it weren't for her, you'd still be in some gutter. That she carried your life for you. And now you'd gone ungrateful." That word exactly. I clenched my jaw. And then someone asked what she meant. "She said you were an addict. That she had all these receipts." And then she pulled out her phone. His voice dropped. "She showed people screenshots of your old texts. The ones from when you were detoxing. Crying for help. The worst ones. Stuff no one should ever see, let alone share."
He paused.
Looked away. I don't know why she did it. But people laughed. Like it was gossip. Not pain. Something inside me curled up and died. Not from the shame. That part of me had already been burned and reborn. But from the betrayal. Again. Still. I had walked away. I had stayed silent. I had chosen peace. But she hadn't. She couldn't. Logan cleared his throat. "I didn't laugh," he said. "I couldn't. I actually left early. But it's been bothering me ever since." He looked at me, then really looked. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." "For what?" I asked. "You didn't do it. I know. But I did walk away from you. When you needed support. I let your past scare me." And Emily, she pretended like she was the hero. I believed her. His voice cracked. I should have known better. I sat down across from him. The silence between us was thick, but not hostile. Just heavy. After a long pause, I said, You know what's funny?" "What?" "I always thought the truth would be a moment. A courtroom. A big reveal." He nodded slowly. "But it's not," I continued. "It's a whisper. A slow unraveling. A person walking in and saying, 'I saw her. I saw what she did.'" Logan's eyes glistened. "She's losing the image," I said quietly. "Bit by bit. Because people like her, they need an audience. And when the crowd thins out, they panic." He stayed a little longer. We talked about our lives since we'd last spoken. Mine quiet and clean, his messy but healing. Before he left, he turned and said, "You know, people see you now.
The real you.
Not just the past. Not just the version she told." I watched him walk down the hallway and disappear around the corner. Then I closed the door and leaned against it. He was right.
People did see me.
Finally, over the next few weeks, the shift became visible. A woman I barely knew, Cassandra from marketing, stopped me in the elevator one morning. "I heard what Emily said," she whispered. "I want you to know nobody believed her. It just made her look cruel." I blinked. She smiled. "You're the strongest person I've ever seen in this office. And she's the most insecure." Then she got off on her floor and vanished into her day like she hadn't just dropped a bomb in mine. Another time, I got an email from a guy named Peter. Subject: "Just so you know, body." I used to follow Emily on Twitter. She posted something shady about not trusting people who cry at rehab and then act like saints. People dragged her. They brought up your work, your charity drives, your essays, even your poetry blog. One person said, "If being vulnerable is a weakness, then I hope I'm never as strong as her. Just thought you should know. Some of us see the truth." I stared at the screen for a long time, then hit reply. 2 words. "Thank you." And then, the biggest shock of all, I got an invitation. A nonprofit leadership summit in Seattle. One of the panelists had dropped out, and the committee wanted me to replace them. Topic: resilience in leadership. At first, I hesitated. I'd never spoken publicly about my past, at least not on a stage. But then I realized maybe it was time. Standing under those lights, I told my story, not as a victim, not as a cautionary tale, but as a survivor. I didn't name names, didn't drag Emily,
Didn't make it about revenge.
I talked about falling, getting back up, being rewritten, and writing myself back. When I finished, the crowd stood. Not everyone, but enough. I saw what eyes, nodding heads, healing, recognition. Later, a young woman approached me in the lobby. She looked about 20, trembling slightly. "I just wanted to say, I went through something similar, and I thought no one would ever understand. But you put it into words." She paused, and it made me feel human again. I hugged her.
Hard.
That was the twist. Not that Emily got exposed. Not that people turned on her. But that I got seen. Really seen. Without defending myself. Without yelling back. Without even needing to say her name. People figured it out on their own. Because truth, real truth, always finds its way through. Even if it takes years. Even if it whispers. Even if it has to wait until the world is ready to listen. They never noticed the books I read. Or the way I would hum jazz while doing the dishes. Or how I'd stay up late helping people on online forums with their essays or resumes, just because I loved words. No one ever asked about my dreams. No one ever paused to wonder who I was beneath the labels they'd stitched to me. But when I finally disappeared, something unexpected started to take shape. The silence was terrifying at first. Like I had thrown myself off a cliff and was waiting for a parachute that might never open. The days stretched out, unfamiliar, wide, and painfully quiet. I didn't have the family group chat pinging me. No backhanded comments from Lacey. No invitations with an asterisk. So I filled the space. First, with deep, guiltless sleep. No alarms. No rushing to bake for family events or answer long, guilt-drenched voicemails. I'd sleep in, stretch, and let sunlight hit my face without obligation pulling me out of bed. Then I cleared out my closet, not just clothes, but entire versions of myself I didn't recognize anymore. Floral dresses I wore to blend in. Blazers I bought to look employable enough to win Mom's nod. I donated half of it. And I started small. A community ceramics class. I'd always loved working with my hands. There, in that dusty little studio with mismatched aprons and clay under my nails, I found something that had been lost for years. Joy. Pure, unfiltered joy. I made lopsided bowls and weirdly shaped mugs. No one cared. Everyone laughed. No comparisons. No hierarchy. Then came Mia. She sat beside me during a beginner's class, struggling to center her clay. She muttered a few curse words under her breath and made me laugh. We hit it off. She worked in design and loved indie music. We grabbed coffee one day after class, then dinner the next week. For the first time in years, I had a friend who didn't know my history, didn't know the family drama, didn't have a side. She just liked me, raw and unfiltered. "I'm glad you're not afraid to start over," Mia said once, sipping oat milk latte across from me. "Most people live in the shadow of who their family tells them they are." I blinked. I hadn't told her much.
But somehow, she saw it anyway.
And then I did something unthinkable. I applied to a writing residency in Vermont. A friend of Mia's had forwarded me the link. 2 months of solitude, mentorship, and workshops in the woods. I almost deleted the email thinking, I'm not the kind of person who gets picked for things like this. But I hit submit. I got in. Standing there in my tiny apartment, reading the acceptance email, I started crying, the kind of crying that breaks you open. Because it wasn't just a writing residency. It was validation. A mirror finally saying, yes, you are more than what they saw. The time in Vermont was magical. Cold, yes. Isolating, sure. But I wrote. God, I wrote like I was bleeding truth onto paper. I wrote about the girl who kept giving, about the pain of being misrepresented, about the rage of being invisible. My mentor, Elise, a poet in her 60s with a silver streak in her hair, read my work and said, "You have a truth people need. Don't let it shrink." After the residency, I was offered a column, a real one, a modest platform in a growing online magazine focused on emotional healing and narrative essays. I called it Unspoken. My second article, She Called Me a Ghost, So I Vanished, went viral. The emails started flooding in. From strangers who felt erased by their own blood. From people who had to grieve the living. From others who found my words like a hand reaching out of the dark. I had never felt seen, not like this. I wasn't famous. I wasn't rich. But I was mine. Entirely beautifully mine. I grew into my own rituals. Early morning walks with my playlist of sad indie songs, late-night writing sprints with chamomile tea, laughing over takeout with Mia on the floor of my apartment. No one told me how to dress. No one judged my playlist or mocked my quietness. And slowly, people began to introduce me with awe. "This is Harper, the writer I was telling you about. This is Harper. She's incredible." The name that once felt like a burden, Harper, the forgotten daughter, the disappointment, the backup plan, now carried new weight. I wasn't anyone's scapegoat anymore. I was the main character in my own life. I never expected to see my old self again, the version of me that used to wait for someone, anyone, to choose me. But that day, she came knocking. Not physically, spiritually. It started with a message request. "Hi Harper. You may not remember me. My name's Valerie. We were in community college together. I saw your column. I just wanted to say thank you." I blinked at the screen, trying to place her face. Then it hit me.
Valerie. Shy. Kept to herself.
Used to sit alone in the campus cafeteria with her headphones in and a book open. I'd once invited her to join me during a group project lunch. We'd shared fries. Talked about music. That was it. I hadn't seen her in 12 years. She went on. "That day you invited me to sit with you, I was thinking of dropping out. I felt like I didn't belong anywhere. I never told you, but it changed something in me. You reminded me I mattered. Anyway, I'm a therapist now. I tell my clients about that moment. Just wanted you to know your kindness had ripples." I stared at the message for so long the screen dimmed. I hadn't even remembered it fully. It was a small gesture, a moment lost in a sea of bigger dramas, deeper pains. But to her, it had meant the world. And that was the beginning. Emails, DMs, comments. A girl I once babysat for, now in college, wrote me to say my essay on self-forgiveness gave her the courage to leave a toxic friend group. A barista from my old job said he'd read my piece on estrangement and sent it to his mom, starting a conversation they'd both avoided for years. And then came the letter. An actual paper letter. No return address. It was in a lavender envelope, my name written in careful cursive. Inside, a folded sheet of thick ivory paper. Neat penmanship. No signature. You once dropped off groceries at our house when you thought we were sleeping. My son had been laid off. We had nothing in the fridge. You saved us. I recognized your name in that article. I never forgot your kindness. Thank you. I clutched the letter to my chest.
I remembered that night.
It was during the recession. A coworker had mentioned her brother's family was struggling. I'd had a little extra from a freelance gig. So I filled 2 bags, cereal, canned beans, peanut butter, pasta, diapers, and left them quietly on their porch. No note. I didn't want them to feel embarrassed. I just hoped it helped. It had. And now, years later, that kindness had circled back, not as fame or money, but as something far more profound, proof that goodness doesn't disappear. It just takes the long road home. One Friday morning, I was invited to speak at a virtual panel on emotional healing through storytelling. I shared my journey, carefully, with grace. No naming names, just the truth. At the end, a young woman raised her hand. "I'm estranged from my mom," she said, voice cracking slightly. "And I always thought that made me broken. But hearing you, it makes me think, maybe I'm just free." The chat blew up with hearts and comments. "Thank you for your voice, Harper. You're changing lives. You're helping us reclaim ourselves." Tears slipped down my cheeks. I wasn't trying to be anyone's hero. I was just trying to survive. But somehow, in surviving, I had become a lighthouse. Then one day, I got an email from an editor at a major publishing house. "Have you ever considered turning your essays into a memoir?" I blinked.
Me?
A memoir? The old version of me would have frozen. Felt unworthy. Waited for someone else to validate my story.
But now?
Now I knew. My story was worth telling. Every stumble, every betrayal, every tear-stained night on my apartment floor, every quiet victory. I said yes. I signed the deal. I cried in Mia's arms. We opened champagne on the balcony, even though it was a Tuesday afternoon. The breeze was cool. The sky that soft orange-pink that only happens before dusk. And for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like I had to look over my shoulder for approval. I was no longer chasing love through obligation. I wasn't begging anyone to see me. I had become whole. I visited my favorite cafe the next week, a hole-in-the-wall place where they knew my order by heart. As I waited for my coffee, the owner's teenage daughter, Serena, came up shyly. "You're Harper, right?" she said. I nodded. She fidgeted. "I read your essay, the one about how your best friend exposed your past." I winced slightly. That one had been raw. She went on. "My ex-best friend outed me. Outed me. To everyone. I thought I was gonna disappear. But then I read your piece and I didn't feel so alone. I printed it out. It's on my wall." My throat tightened. I reached over and gently squeezed her hand. "Thank you for telling me. I'm so proud of you." She beamed. Later that evening, I found myself scrolling through old photos, back when I still posed beside Lacey at parties or smiled awkwardly at family barbecues. In each picture, my smile looked glued on. A performance. Now, I didn't need to perform. I was writing my own scenes now. Mia and I planned a short trip upstate, a little cabin retreat. She called it our celebration of sanity. On the way, we stopped at a tiny bookstore. A woman behind the counter gasped when she saw me. "I have to ask," she said, clutching a copy of The Atlantic. "Are you Harper Miles?" "The Harper Miles." I blushed. "That's me." She grinned. "Your writing saved me last year." And she handed me a cup of tea on the house. A free cup of tea. A handwritten letter. A teenage girl whispering thank you. None of it was grand. But each one was a seed of light, blooming inside me. It was the universe, whispering back. "We saw. We remember. Thank you for not giving up." The book deal announcement hadn't even cooled before the universe did what it always does when you begin to rise. It tested me. It started with a phone call I never expected. "Harper," a familiar voice said. "It's Lacey." For a second, I genuinely thought I was hallucinating. Lacey, I repeated, stunned. Why are you calling me? There was a pause. A breath. And then, I heard about the book. Congratulations. Her voice was syrupy. Too smooth. I didn't reply. I was hoping we could talk, she added. In person. Just to clear the air. My body tightened. Everything in me screamed no. But something deeper whispered go. Not for her.
For you.
So I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe downtown. Neutral ground. The same one where we'd once shared dreams over lattes and Pinterest wedding boards. Now, we sat across from each other like strangers wearing the same skin. She looked almost the same. Carefully done makeup. Manicured hands.
But there was something brittle in her eyes now.
Like the shine had cracked. I want to start by saying I'm sorry, she began, hands wrapped around her mug.
For what I did.
For exposing you. For telling your past to everyone. I stayed silent. She continued. At the time, I thought I was protecting your fiancé. I told myself that honesty was the right thing. But really, I was just angry. You had everything I didn't. There it was. Not regret. Not love. Envy. Everything you didn't? I repeated, heat rising behind my eyes. Lacey, I had trauma. I had scars. I had a broken relationship with my family. You had a house, a stable job, a clean record. But you still painted me as the villain. She looked away. I was jealous of how people loved you. Even with your past, you lit up rooms. I blinked, stunned. You ruined my engagement, I said softly. You made sure my ex's family saw court records that weren't even mine. You printed out custody records from a foster case that had nothing to do with me. You called my editor and implied I was mentally unstable. She winced. I know. I was wrong. No, I corrected her. You were cruel. She sat back,
silent.
For a long moment, I looked at her, really looked, and I realized I didn't hate her anymore. I pitied her, her need to control, to diminish, to make others smaller so she could feel big. None of it had given her joy. She looked tired,
hollow,
like she was still fighting ghosts. I'm not here to be friends, I said finally. I'm here to speak the truth. She nodded slowly. I continued. You told the world about my trauma thinking it would destroy me. Instead, it gave me freedom. I don't hide who I am anymore. A tear slid down her cheek. I'm sorry, she whispered again. I accept that, I replied. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I stood to leave. And then she said the words that shocked me. Would you ever mention me in your book? I turned slowly. She added, not by name, obviously, but maybe something redemptive? Something that shows people I'm not a monster? I stared at her. Lacey, I said calmly, this book is about truth, not fairy tales.
She didn't respond.
And I walked out, the door chime echoing like a period at the end of a sentence. That evening, I finally did something I'd been avoiding for years. I visited my parents. The same ones who'd once signed paperwork to remove me from their insurance and their will. The ones who chose silence when I begged for love. I arrived unannounced. My mother opened the door, startled. My father sat on the recliner behind her, pale and older than I remembered. Harper, she said, hesitant. Is something wrong? No, I said. Not anymore.
She let me in.
The house smelled the same, lemon cleaner and distant regret. I sat across from them, my hand steady. I'm writing a book, I told them. And before it goes to print, I want to be clear with both of you. They exchanged glances. I'm going to tell the truth, I said. About being kicked out. About being gaslit. About how you chose public image over your daughter's safety. My mother's face twisted. But Harper. No, I said firmly. You don't get to rewrite history now. You may not like how you appear in the story, but that's because you weren't kind in it. My father shifted uncomfortably. You're exaggerating.
No, Dad, I said.
You just got used to me staying silent. The room went cold. I stood. I didn't come here to ask for permission. I came to inform you. I'm not the scared girl who begged for crumbs. I'm a woman now, a writer, a survivor. I left without another word. In the days that followed, I finalized the manuscript. The chapters were brutal,
Honest.
beautiful. I didn't name Lacey, or my ex, or my parents. But the truth didn't need names to resonate. When the book hit shelves, it sparked something I never could have imagined. Readers emailed me saying, "I thought I was the only one." Survivors wrote, "Your words helped me find peace with my own estrangement." Therapists used chapters in sessions. Teachers printed essays for classes. Book clubs wept over my story. One day, I got a message from a girl named Dakota. She wrote, "I almost took my life this year. Then I read your chapter about shame. You said, 'We only carry shame when the wound is still open. Healing is the thread that sews it shut.' I just wanted you to know I'm still here. Because of you." I wept, not for myself, but for every version of me who thought her voice was a liability. It wasn't. It was a lighthouse. And I wasn't just surviving now. I was blazing. The weeks after the book launch felt surreal. I wasn't just moving forward. I was finally grounded in something real, something earned. There was a moment I'll never forget. I was walking through a bookstore in Portland, when I used to haunt during the loneliest winters of my life, and I saw a young woman holding my book, her face halfway buried in a page. She was crying silently.
She didn't notice me.
I didn't say anything. I just watched from a distance, heart full, soul trembling. That girl, she reminded me of who I had been. And that's when it hit me. I had become the person I once needed. Not perfect, not painless, but whole. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing approval. I wasn't curating a version of myself for other people's comfort. I had carved space in the world with nothing but scars and syllables. I didn't just heal. I transformed. I moved into a smaller, sunlit apartment that overlooked the river. No more lavish illusions. No more trying to keep up with the curated lives of toxic people. I filled the space with secondhand books, wild plants, and the scent of cinnamon candles. I adopted an old dog from the shelter, Rufus, a grumpy golden retriever with bad hips and the kindest eyes. We became a pair of misfits who had finally found home. And I found joy in the ordinary. Cooking dinner with jazz on in the background. Writing at 3 a.m. when the muse wouldn't let go. Phone calls with readers who shared their stories. Quiet mornings where no one expected me to explain myself. I reconnected with people I'd once pushed away in shame. Old college friends who had tried to stay in touch. A neighbor who used to drop off muffins without asking questions. They welcomed me back without conditions. And I built new connections too. People who saw my past not as a stain, but as a tapestry. One of them was Elijah. We met at a writer's retreat in Northern California. He was a poet, quiet, with a smile that made you feel safe without saying a word. We shared a table at lunch, then a walk by the cliffs, then a conversation that lasted until sunrise. He never asked me to shrink, never tiptoed around my darkness. He simply said, "Your story doesn't scare me. It just makes your light more honest." We weren't perfect, but we were real. And that was more than enough. I didn't need a ring or a rescue or a fairy tale. I had myself. And that was the most powerful love story of all. There were still days when grief would knock on the door. Birthdays I spent alone, emails from family I never answered, dreams that still carried the ache of old wounds. But those were moments, not definitions. I had rebuilt a life that was mine. A life where I didn't need anyone's permission to be proud. One day, I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. Inside, there was a note. "I read your book. I see now. I hope you keep shining, even if I'm not in the light anymore. Mom." I didn't cry. I just folded it carefully and placed it between 2 pages of my copy of the book. A reminder that healing doesn't always mean reunion, but it does mean release. I also heard through mutual contacts that Lacey had left her job and moved out of state. I didn't follow her updates. I didn't need to know her ending to write my own. And maybe that was the real power. I didn't need to win. I just needed to live. in truth, in integrity, in freedom. Months later, I was invited to speak at a university, a panel on identity, trauma, and storytelling. I walked into the auditorium to see hundreds of faces, students, professors, survivors, skeptics. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. And for the first time ever, I didn't feel like an imposter. I was the story now. I was the voice I once begged to hear. When the panel ended, a young man approached me. He looked nervous but determined. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course," I replied. "How did you survive all that without turning bitter?" I smiled gently. I said. I was bitter. I was angry. I was vengeful. But bitterness is heavy. And one day I realized, if I kept carrying it, I'd never have space for joy. He nodded, eyes glassy. "Bitterness feels like protection," I continued. "But really, it's just the cage we mistake for armor." I walked out of that auditorium lighter, not because I proved it to anyone else, but because I finally stopped asking. If you're still here, reading, watching, listening, then this letter is for you. Maybe you've been betrayed. Maybe someone tried to bury your truth before it could bloom. Maybe you've made mistakes that haunt you, or worn masks so long you forgot who you were underneath. Or maybe you've been the one standing silently while someone else's voice trembled under accusation. Wherever you are on that path, I want you to know something. You are not what they did to you. You are not what they said about you. You are not your worst day, your darkest thought, your most shame-filled moment. You are the breath that keeps coming, the courage that shows up even when your hands are shaking, the quiet hope that whispers, maybe there's more than this. There is more. There is light after the unraveling. I won't lie to you. Healing isn't linear. It's messy and nonlinear, and full of days where you'll want to go back to the numbness because at least it felt familiar. But on the other side of that storm is you, the real you, not the version that people demanded, not the edited bio or filtered smile. You, the soft, strong, scarred, and still standing soul. If my story has taught me anything, it's this. Truth doesn't destroy you. It sets you free. Even when it hurts. Even when people run. Even when your voice shakes. And even if it costs you everything you thought you needed. I used to believe that silence was safety. That if I kept my head down and followed the rules, someone else's rules, I'd be spared the pain of rejection. But the truth? Silence was a slow death. Speaking was resurrection. So if you've been holding something inside you, some past, some hurt, some secret you were told was too much, let this be your permission slip. You are allowed to take up space. Your story matters. Your pain is valid. Your healing is not a burden. It's a blueprint for someone else's survival. You never know who's watching you rise and thinking, if they made it, maybe I can, too. I'm not here to be a hero. I'm just a woman who got tired of hiding, who finally said, enough. And if I can stand here, on the other side of betrayal, of lies, of exile, then so can you. So here's what I hope you take with you. Tell the truth, even if your voice trembles. Leave the rooms where your soul has to shrink to be loved. Forgive yourself more often than you punish yourself. Find your people. And if they don't exist yet, become them. Don't wait for closure. Be your own conclusion. Write it down. Burn it. Share it. Scream it. But don't bury it. And never, ever apologize for surviving. This isn't the end. Not for me. Not for you. Not for the thousands of stories still waiting to be told. Because if I learned anything from being exposed, betrayed, and left for dust, it's that sometimes being broken open is the beginning of becoming whole. So stand up. Even if you're standing in ashes. Even if your hands are trembling. Even if the world told you you weren't enough. You are. You always were. You just forgot. This letter is here to remind you. From one wounded warrior to another.
Keep going.